All right, we had started this meeting a few moments ago. I'll give a quick summary. I had forgotten to click the record button. In terms of RAM limitation fixes, that process has started. The ENF team is going through and defining some of the items, but for clarity, they're not going to be working on any items. Nothing at this time is planned for the LEAP 5.0 release. The P2P optimized transaction propagation, those items will be part of the LEAP 5.0 release. That project is underway. Milestones have been defined, and the project is running without issue at this point. P2P peer discovery is back on track. The next milestone is July 20th. There's no particular updates with that other than the fact that the previous issues surrounding test cases and development procedures, I believe, have largely been resolved. But of course, we'll know when the next milestone is presented to Guillaume and Aaron, not Aaron Cox. Again, for the July 20th, Antler CDT, which has been marked as closed, that is now in production. The product team is watching it and collecting feedback based on the software that's being launched, but at this time, there's no further work planned on that. And that brings us to instant finality. Guillaume, would you like to give a brief update on that?
Yes. So essentially, we've got our first approval for the first milestone for that one, which is the BLS aggregate signature and new cryptographic intrinsics in the code base. So it's been quite slow, but understandably so, because this is very low level, very complex code with very few people that actually have the knowledge base to review. So we're still waiting for this to be reviewed and to be completed before resuming the work. So we're still on standby. We still have, after that milestone, we still have 2 other milestones that are ready for review that need to be reviewed before we can proceed any further. So I've been reassured by the ENF team that they are dedicated to reviewing these milestones as quickly as possible, but we still have to wait until that's done before we can proceed any further. So we're on standby, waiting for complete review of these 3 milestones, and then we'll be able to resume the work.
And to add context onto that, so this would be the main feature that would be found in LEAP 5.0. It would be a hard fork. We were trying to coordinate, at least on EOS's end, that we'd have that sometime in September. That's likely unlikely, so we've mentioned now Q4 instead. I think October or early November is doable. We do want to get this out before the holiday season starts, because you get the Western holiday season mid-December and on, and then you get in Asia Chinese New Year that starts depending on the year, but let's say mid-January and on. So you get a really a 2-month period where it's extremely difficult to coordinate a hard fork. So we do want to have all of that ready beforehand. So we don't have an exact date yet. We'll be putting out some communication shortly in terms of kind of what we're aiming for. But I think realistically, at this stage, I still see it's possible to have something out either October, early November. Theoretically, we could push it to early December. And that's for, on EOS's side, actual deployment, which means if you walk back from there, we would need to have everything finalized, start the testing process, deploying on Jungle, etc., well before that. So about 2 months or so before, give or take. And as far as I can tell, we're still on track for that. But just to give an idea for the other chains here, that's what we're aiming for. But that instant finality really is that key piece for LEAP 5.0 that we want to bundle up so that everything is one shot, hard fork, everything combined. We don't have to go through this process twice.
Makes sense, Yves.
And Guillaume, maybe Guillaume, if you just want to touch upon, I know you on the UX side have already deployed something. Can you maybe just explain that a little bit? Because I think it'll also give context as to where we are in testing and yeah.
Yeah. So the first main component, I guess, of the instant finality upgrade is the set of new intrinsics and new cryptographic functions, host functions that now allow for a wide variety of very interesting use cases. So we did deploy this, and we've been testing this extensively over a private testnet that we have, and we're about to roll it out on our on the UX public testnet. So this is slightly ahead of the, I guess, like the typical release cycle. Typically, yes, upgrades first, but since we also have been working on a number of, I guess, like shielded transaction protocols that rely on these intrinsics, we've deployed them. We've been testing them like ahead of the typical release cycle. And so far, so good. Everything has been working very well. These intrinsics are actually really, really fast, and that will give Antelope as a whole a very nice competitive edge when it comes to these zero knowledge proof protocols and systems. Nobody has anything that compares to that at the moment. No other blockchain has that.
Yeah, so I guess for those listening, part of that is we're already testing prior to official testing. We're still doing testing. There's going to be a lot of testing over the next couple of months at different levels within different test nets in the ecosystem.
Amazing. And if anyone wants to hear a little bit more about this, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to dig into the details further. It's actually quite exciting stuff.
And Guillaume is hosting us all at his house when we actually deploy this, by the way. So last year, remember, when we deployed IBC, I went over. Now, apparently, you're all invited, and he's covering all costs for everybody. Just throwing that out there.
Sure.
Fantastic, man.
What a great guy.
So you and your families are invited down to Costa Rica on Guillaume's dime to launch the official launch party that he'll be hosting for Instant Finality.
Yeah,
Sometime at the end, sometime in Q4.
the farm. Yeah.
You'll see that there's a very different definition of house here in Costa Rica than you're probably used to, but yes, you're invited.
I'm actually super psyched. I had a chance to talk to you a while about that, and boy, it sounds like heaven, man.
Well, we'll need someone to press that button too, like this time when we release that update. So if there's any takers,
I'll come
Last
put
time
the
was-
button again.
A little bit arm wrestling contest.
yeah, there you go. We're gonna make it like 2 or 3 buttons to press, so you guys can have each your own.
Sounds great.
All right. Anything else on instant finality?
I had a question. I'd raised my hand on back on the CDT, and I've been hearing from some folks that it'd be great if there was a Mac OS deliverable or binary for that. Instead of is that kind of a binary on the plan at all, or should everyone just use the Dune implementation?
I guess I can kind of address this one. Bart just left. The Dune implementation is for that, seeing as it's Docker, so you can run it in Mac. We also just went through a restructuring inside of the ENF, and so the resources that were on Dune CDT are no longer with us. So I think it's unlikely that we would make any additions to that. So I think it's safe to stay at this stage that will remain the case for the foreseeable future.
Okay, thanks.
If I'm not mistaken, there is documentation for how to run it on Mac using Dune. I think that's the big part of it.
Yeah,
Not be satisfactory, but it should work. We do have people that use it.
yeah. So I gave it up and just ran it on my Linux nodes. So
Yeah.
But yeah, so some people will be able to do it. It's there. just wanted to know if that was, where that was. So thanks for answering that. Back to you, Jeff.
All right. Well, actually, at this point, I'll pass it over to Aaron. You want to give us an update on SDK?
Yeah, sure. It's been since April, I want to say, that I've been on one of these calls. So a lot has happened. Since we'd last talked, the session kit, which is it's the UAL replacement, essentially. It's kind of that wallet connectivity layer, the thing that does transactions, that is in a stable position. It is released as 0.5 right now, but the next release will be the 1.0 release. We're staging like all of the remaining changes for that. They're all going to be fairly minor, except for some syntax type stuff. The biggest changes left there are based on the contract kit, which is what has been in full swing development-wise for a couple months now. The contract kit is something we have never had before in the Antelope ecosystem. It is basically a code generation tool and an abstraction on top of smart contracts and tables. So it's going to let developers working in this space more easily work with contracts, the actions they have, the types they have, the tables, the data it contains, all of that stuff. And just provide this new tool that we've, like I said, we've never had before. We have run into some edge cases that may lead us back to this group or back to the ENF for things that we may need out of the CDT. The ABIs specifically, that the CDT outputs are missing data, and a lot of the work we're doing are based on the ABIs. It's how we're doing code generation and understanding the contract from a logic perspective. We've opened one issue for that so far. It's on GitHub. We notified Nathan of that, but there may be other aspects of the contract kit that we may need to lean on some CDT improvements to help with. But like I said, the contract kit's coming along. It's leading to some changes in the session kit that'll lead us to a 1.0 of both of those, and the website, along with, I don't know, I don't even know how to quantify the amount of documentation that's coming. That's all in a really good position. There's previews. We just showed it off in the weekly Wharf Kit call this week. Hopefully it'll be a really good place for developers to jump in and start building on native when they are doing the front-end aspects, the client development aspects of their project. We also have links that will send them off to other resources for contract development, when they're actually working with the CDT, since we won't be covering that in our documentation. That's kind of out of our scope. So,
Aaron, sorry to interrupt. I wanted to ask a question. You mentioned some potential improvements to CDT that you would be requesting from the ENF. Do these include adding the indices of multi-index tables to the ABIs?
Yep, that is actually the one issue I was referencing that we already opened. So,
perfect.
Yeah, right now we don't know, when you look at a table, we don't know what the indices are, so we can't strongly type that data. Yeah, I've been talking with Shaq a decent amount about that on these calls. So there's a lot of parties.
That's a good one to add. That's a good one to add. I think it's a feature that's been sorely missing for since the beginning.
Yep.
That as well.
Yep. And
now you submitted an issue, or you submitted a PR?
An issue.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have nobody on our team's familiar with the CDT in that way that we could just jump in and do a PR. We probably could learn it, but it would just take some time, and would slow us down. So if it comes to it, we're hopeful that the reason that the ABI is in this one specific issue that nobody's really addressed it up to this date is because nobody was truly leveraging that part of the ABI. And so we figure by actually leveraging that part in the contract kit, maybe it'll put some priority to improve the CDT. And then we have this kind of symbiotic back and forth relationship where one product can add a feature, the other can adopt it, and it'll just go back and forth and create this nice feedback loop to improve both products.
Do you anticipate the form of that to be just an expansion of the data, held in the ABI, but just a listing of the tables and indices and whatnot?
Yes. And I mean,
not that that's easy, but that would be simple and straightforward way to do it, right?
yes. And we're pretty sure that the data fields exist already in the current structure. Like if you go look at any contract on any of these networks, it'll have the fields. They're just all empty. Like the CDT is not inputting the data into those fields. So this might be just a bug that nobody's noticed until now. But I'm going to leave that determination up to those who know more than me on this subject. But if we are asking for changes, we're going to hope that they're going to be reverse compatible. And we're going to push forward with the contract kit, assuming that that data is empty, and we will make it work under current conditions. It just won't be as good as it can be if we get those things filled out. So,
yeah, I think that's the way to, not that you're asking my opinion, but I do think that's the way to go. It's no one else is working on this, right? If you guys are going to blaze the trail, then do it the way you think makes sense. Keep coming back to the group and keeping us informed of what you're doing. And I mean, that's the way you push forward changes that, rather than trying to get consensus ahead of time, which would be a big old nightmare.
yep. So we'll make it work with the way that they work live right now. And then as developers start adopting the contract kit, when they point this out and they're like, oh, the tables don't do this thing and then we can point to this issue in the CDT, and that might rally support around improving that aspect of the CDT itself. So we're kind of going this method to prove demand, to show that it is actually worth improving this aspect of the ecosystem.
I think that's good.
So,
I've always wondered why the tables weren't there. The table fields are sort of all implied through the actions, right? Through the values of the actions,
yeah,
it seemed like you could have had it the whole time, but so maybe the 0.1 version of this is simply to have the CDT spit out those just spit out the tables and indices, because they're there. They're there in the contracts, right? And so,
yeah. And if there is a path forward for smart contract developers who would want to leverage this in the new contract kit, because they could just edit the ABI by hand. The one that was created by the CDT, they could go in and just put that data into the ABI and upload it to the chain, and it will work. So it's kind of a little bit of a headache to say, oh, I've got this thing that was made for me, but now I got to go fill in the missing parts that weren't filled in. So there are options to make it work, and we can show how it works. It's just having that part automated and actually output properly would be the best developer experience possible.
Yeah, so you don't have to add code. You don't have to push any new WASM. You simply push updated ABI on the existing WASM.
Yep.
That'd be great. Make it backwards compatible.
Exactly. So that way, like, we could do that with the system contracts even, where it's just an ABI update and the WASM doesn't change. It wouldn't affect the operations in that way. But then all of a sudden it would enable all developers leveraging the system contract to have this better developer experience through stronger typing and auto completion and like the things that like help developers learn passively. So yeah, other than that, it is full steam ahead on the contract kit. Like I said, the website's gonna probably mid this month have a big update. It'll actually have some marketing materials. It'll have a good portion of documentation. And it'll also document what was previously known as EOS.io Core, the EOS.js alternative that we built years ago and have been maintaining since. That is now part of the WharfKit project, and it is just called the Antelope library now. So you can include that, and it's WharfKit/Antelope, and it is a complete replacement for EOS.js at this point. So yeah, I think that at a high level is where we're at. So everything is fairly well on track from a project perspective. The contract kit is delayed because we keep kind of reinventing the way it should be. We're going to go over in terms of hours for what we said for the contract kit, but we're going to eat that cost. We're not coming back to the coalition asking for more money or anything. The timeline just on that contract kit may be longer than what we originally anticipated. So yeah, that's where we're at. Any other questions or thoughts, comments? Cool.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. So that's the end of our agenda. Is there anything else people would like to add to discuss today?
When we're done with this, I'd like to go on camera for about 5 minutes, please.
Anything else?
Nothing for me. Gypsy?
All right.
I don't know. Nothing pertinent here. I mean, I guess I could share that the Explorer work is ongoing. DLT's been doing a pretty good job of cleaning up a little bit of what we had done for the multi-chain support, adding some features. There's Pomelo grants that got pretty good support for them to get funded to do that work. So that, we'll definitely share in the channel once it's ready so that anybody can look at it. It'll be a single URL, explorer.antelope.io, that will have an Explorer for all chains. And he'll probably be reaching out maybe to some chains just to ensure branding and logo and colors and all are what those chains would like. And then we'll get it deployed. May not have full features for every chain. Obviously there's differences, but it'll be something that works. I think most valuably so far, the deploy preview link that we do have that's not at the main URL or, a well-published one, works for Jungle. So I've shared it with a couple of people that needed a Jungle Explorer, and they were happy to have that. So they said they're looking forward to the real thing being deployed. So that is happening. That's all I've got to share relevant.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you to DLT, if you're listening in.
All right.